In this lecture, I will discuss our lesson on leading change. Recall our definition of leadership: influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation, while operating to accomplish the mission and improving the organization. Implicit in improving is that the organization must change. When we think about change, we'll realize that resistance to change is natural, that all of us as humans resist change. That it's often justified, and we'll discuss many of the reasons why resistance to change may be justified. We must anticipate it. As leaders, if we want to create change, part of the change process and our planning to create change must anticipate that resistance. And that resistance must be overcome. If we want the organization to change, we need to recognize that it's natural that people don't want to change, that very often their resistance to change is justified, that we as leaders should anticipate that, and that we must develop a plan for overcoming that resistance if we want to see the change successful. Some of the sources for resistance to change at the individual level are a fear that individuals will lose something of value. Some people, after a change, may have a different position. They may have less authority, less power, may make less money if it changes their position. So it's natural that they might fear the outcome of that change. We may believe that we're being exploited as employees in an organization if we believe that change is created to do something just simply to benefit the leader, to make the leader stand out, or to create some other form of change that really doesn't help create or accomplish the organization's mission. We may believe that there's no real need for change. We may believe that everything is going fine as it is. Of course, that perception can be accurate or it could be inaccurate. But again, we may believe that there's just simply no good reason to change, that everything's functioning fine just like it is. If our past experience with change has been bad, if we've lost something of value, if we felt that we've been exploited, if we've had to participate in change in the past that was really needless or not necessary to accomplish the organization's mission or to improve the organization, then we're not likely to want to engage in change again. There should be some resistance at the group level. Change may threaten group norms. Think back to Area 2 where we discussed the group structural dimensions, and every group has certain norms, normative behavior, what's considered normal or acceptable individual behavior in that group. And change may ask that we change those norms, that we change what is considered acceptable or normal behavior in the group. So we as individuals will resist because we're committed to the group and we're committed to maintaining those group norms. It may threaten cohesion. We may have to break up groups. People may be transferred. So at the group level, if we're committed to a group, the more committed we are, then the more likely it is going to be that we're going to resist change. So this is one of the paradoxes that you must deal with as a leader. On the one hand, you want to create highly cohesive groups in your organization, but recognize that when you seek to change, that very cohesion may create resistance to change. At the organizational level, there will be reasons for resistance to change. One is just simply time. There's only so much space available for us in terms of the amount of time we can work. There's only 24 hours in the day. I often rail against the concept of doing more with less. If we can actually do more, that means we've been goofing off. So if we don't have time for change, then that's a very good reason not to want to participate in that change. Tradition. Many organizations are traditional organizations. They are proud of, usually for very good reason, of their past. And the past has gotten them to where they're at today. So if they view themselves as successful today, they're very likely not to want to change those traditions. The organization may not be designed for change, or it may not be designed for rapid change, especially if we have to change the organization, if we're moving one component from one major subdivision to another, or if we're trying to flatten the organization. Then we're likely to encounter resistance to change because, again, most of those vertical lines and boxes that we see in an organizational chart represent groups of people, and they may be highly cohesive, and they may be resistant to changing. There are some strategies that leaders can utilize to overcome resistance to change, though. The first is to obviously demonstrate a need for change. We should be able to demonstrate that the change is going to improve the organization's ability to accomplish its mission. We should allow subordinates to participate. Think back about our lesson on goal setting, because change is a form of goal setting at the organizational level. We know that people are more likely to buy into and be motivated to pursue goals when they play a role in establishing what those goals are. Think also about our lesson on intergroup conflict. Intergroup conflict is healthy if it is controlled and it produces effective change in the organization. So if we have functional conflict, which is a form of employees participating and debating which strategy or which way to pursue a given goal or change, then you will have beneficial change in the organization, and you'll also have people who believe that they were able to contribute to, or at least be heard out in the change process, and they'll be more likely to support the change. Ensure that additional training is received. Very often, when we want people to change, it requires that they engage in new tasks or assume new roles. So again, think back about what we learned about expectancy theory. When people ask themselves the question, if I try it, can I do it? If it's a new task that we do not provide training for, then they may well answer that question with a no and not be motivated to engage in the change because they believe that they won't be able to effectively do their job. So it's natural that they would resist that. So as a leader, we need to make sure that there's adequate training for any new task or roles that they must assume. Actively support the change. As leaders, we have to beat the drum in that parade for change. We have to actively support it. Very often, as we go lower in the organization, if we're mid-level managers or first-line leaders, it's critical that we support the change, that we actively support it, that we honestly support it. We can't go to our subordinates and say, okay, here's the latest fad that the chief or deputy chief or whoever came up with, and we have to implement this. That's not an effective way to support change. We have to, as leaders all up and down the chain of command, actively support the change. Make changes incrementally. Just like we learned in goal setting theory, if we establish small incremental changes, people are, one, more likely to achieve those. Two, they're more likely to be motivated to continue toward that ultimate goal and maintain the level of persistence that we need if we establish a small number of incremental changes that take them towards the goal, the overarching goal that we hope to achieve. Last but not least, particularly in when change is necessary under critical circumstances, as leaders we must consider the use of coercion. Much like in intergroup conflict, where we had to consider forcing to stop dysfunctional conflict, As leaders, when there's a critical incident and we don't have time to demonstrate a need for the change or to allow people to participate or give additional training, support the change or make that change incremental, then we may have to use coercion. It should be a last resort, but it should be considered as one of the options that we as leaders must always have available if we want to create change. Again, I'll emphasize that that should only be utilized as a last resort, and it should only be utilized in instances where that is the only effective and safe way to achieve the change we hope to accomplish. At the individual level, we'll see some outcomes of failure to overcome resistance to change. At the individual level, individuals won't be motivated. If we don't demonstrate the need for change, we don't provide training, if we don't engage in all those leader behaviors, they're not going to be motivated to engage in the change activities that we seek. They're not going to be satisfied. If we force a change down their throats that they don't believe is necessary, then employees aren't going to be satisfied. And then finally, if we don't develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities to enable them to create the change, then those will be reduced. We'll see changes in group structural dimensions. One of the worst changes we could potentially see is where organized, resistance to change becomes normative behavior, where groups and individual people in the organization take steps to actively thwart change efforts that are important for the organization. And finally, if we don't overcome change, then we'll see reduced organizational effectiveness or efficiency. If we're trying to accomplish something that's necessary to accomplish the mission, then obviously if we don't achieve that, we're not going to be as effective as we could be. If we engage in change behavior that doesn't achieve the change, then obviously we're devoting time and effort toward a behavior with no suitable outcome. So we're not as efficient as we could be. So failure to overcome resistance has many negative effects at the individual, group, and organizational levels in the organization.